Hey, what's up, y'all? This is DJ Wiz from Kid and Play, and I'm listening to ESP. And don't y'all know it's a house party up in here? You better tune in. Holla.
Good evening, and welcome to ESP&JAXS Speaks. It's always amazing to be with you once again. Jax will be in a little bit. We have a shorter show, shorter show for you this week. Last week's show, thank you. We have to say thank you. I know that show ran for like 2 hours, but it was amazing, and you all were amazing, and you were just so grateful that not only did the women step up as normal, because we like to have a voice, but the men, you guys were pretty awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all the emails. Thank you for all the calls after the fact. We really did not expect such an amazing response to that show, but we are so grateful. Thank you. Toby Hicks, Jax wants to know. Jack wants to know how the ribs came out, but I guess she'll talk to you about that later when she gets in. We love to bring you information, and because that's what this show is about. If we're not talking about a subject that's important to you or potentially important to you, and we can't bring you information that affects your lives, then we're not doing our jobs. But from the responses that we've gotten from you, we've been kind of hitting the nail on the head. So once again, I have to thank you so much for sticking with us through the changes and as we find our way, and as you help us build. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And keep recommending us to your friends, and keep going to the sites and clicking and responding. And thank you. I can't say it enough. Okay, so where are we at? Before we even start tonight's show, let me tell you actually where we're at. So you're either watching us on Facebook Live right now or Periscope, which we've been having trouble with the transmission on Periscope, guys. We're sorry. Um, we'll get it right. It's a service that we're using that enhances our distribution. So they said that they're working on it to make everything better. But come on over to Facebook or YouTube, we're running live, or you might be on Twitch as we're running live. Um, but if you can't stay with us for the whole show, and as I said, this one is going to be shorter. Trust me, I'm not going to keep you 2 hours like the last one. We are also available on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube on the regular platform. You can also go back and watch our other shows. And if you do go there, remember to click and subscribe. We're on TuneIn, we're on Anchor Podcasts, we're on Breaker, Radio Public, Twitcher, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast. And if you want to leave us a comment during the week, as I said, some of you do regularly now, call us and leave us comments. We'd love it. Our number is 929-336-7887. And at any point, you can leave a voicemail if you don't feel like typing. We are on Instagram at ESP Real Talk. We're on Twitter at ESP Speaks. You can send us an email at esp@espspeaks.com or espspeaks@gmail.com. Okay, so we have a wide variety of places where you can catch us, as you well see. Now, this week's show means a lot to me in terms of information because it's something that people really don't wrap their minds around in terms of understanding the importance of it. But let me go back in history a little bit. A man named Benjamin Franklin, one of the forefathers of this country, his most repeated quote is, "Our new Constitution is now established. Everything seems to promise that it will be durable. But in this world, nothing is certain except for death and taxes." Well, tonight's show, family, is about tax. All righty. So your taxes. Bear with me because I have a lot of notes. You might want to grab a pen or a piece of paper as well. We have lived through a crazy, crazy year. 2020, you lived through it. I don't have to tell you. On so many levels, just tested every last ounce of energy in whatever we had in us. But we have to keep a sense of normalcy with certain things, and your taxes is one of them. It's time to make a financial balance, and it's time to make a financial accounting. And here's what people don't get. It's not just that the government has to get their due. What most people don't realize is that we are actually paying into ourselves when we take the time to do our taxes. And I'm going to explain that breakdown as we go through. And Jax is going to handle, when she comes in, she's going to handle a very specific set of events that have happened because of COVID and the pandemic. But I'm going to handle the overall sense of why and what. It's not just a historical thing where taxation without representation and the Boston Tea Party and all of that stuff. Yes, that's their history, and we were told about that. But there's something more important that affects you on a broader basis that, once again, people don't embrace this. For the most part, people tend to shy away from doing their taxes. I'll put it off till next year. I'll get an extension. I cannot stress to you the importance of getting them done on a regular basis, and not just getting them done, but getting them done on time. Now, let's look at what they actually do, because not only do taxes enhance our community, for the most part, we're meant to think that it goes to the government. There is a percentage of it that goes to the government. Again, I'm going to give you these breakdowns, but there is a large part of your taxation that deals directly with you right now and with you later. And the you later is the most important part. And that's why it's really, in my mind, mandatory that you keep a schedule with regard to how you pay your taxes and why you're paying your taxes. And hopefully this short broadcast will help to clarify and change your mind on a couple of things. And forgive me if I'm looking down a lot, because I'm going to be reading my notes to make sure that I cover everything. So let's start with the health program. The United States government, your taxes basically are spread amongst three different areas in terms of how the taxes are used. But let's look at the fact that the United States government right now is over 23 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars in debt. So there is a percentage of our taxes that go to the interest and paying off the interest. And that's about 8%. Then your next area of spending is the mandatory spending. Now, the mandatory spending, this is important. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Veterans Affairs, and entitlements. And we'll go through that. We'll go through the breakdown on those. The third, and that's maybe 33, 36%. The third largest is defense spending, more considered infrastructure. So it's defense spending, education, infrastructure, basically what happens in your communities. And again, very important for the now, because this is what, when you're in an area that's being, let's say, gentrified, and that community went from 3,000 people, and because they're building high-rise buildings and so on, now there's 6,000 to 8,000 people. Your infrastructure system, your sewerage, your water pressures, your when you flush your toilet, they have to make sure that everything that for your daily functions can meet the needs of the new 8,000 people. So maybe you'll see them digging up the streets and they're going from this size pipe to a huge pipe. So all of these things can be trafficked in the ways that they're supposed to be trafficked. And that's your city government is in charge of that type of infrastructure. But these essentially are where your taxes are going. So it makes sense to pay into them, because once again, this is for our current living. But my thing is, I need you to understand the greatest importance of the later, not just the now, the later, because if you're not keeping a consistent flow as to how you're filing your taxes, if you're leaving gaps, if you're not paying a year and then you skip 2 years and then you have to catch up, or you're kind of throwing yourself off when it comes to retirement, because Social Security, which is directly attached to your income tax flow, is where the money is going to be coming from that aids in your survival later on. I mean, we can talk about the IRAs and the different programs and the different entitlements, and we will talk about different things along the way. But the long-term effects are, you need to keep your schedule intact. The younger you start, the better. You're not required to file taxes under the age of 19 because you're considered a dependent. But once you start paying taxes, make that a priority for yourself to do, because once again, it affects you later on in life. Okay. Having said that, let's get into a more detailed look at the process. All right. And which, by the way, guys, you know, it's normally April 15th. That's not this year. I think you have it's May 17th, or there are in certain cases it's all the way to July. I'll double check for you. But grab a pen. You know what? Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back in a second, and we'll really get down into specifics of the why. So we'll be back in a minute with ESP&JAXS. So we're back, fam. All right. So now that we've generalized the issue, and let's dig into really more specific. Because here's the thing, particularly with 2020 and COVID and a lot of people losing their jobs, and there was nothing normal about 2020. So of course, there's nothing that's going to be normal about filing your taxes for 2020. There are caps where normally if you make under a certain amount, you do not have to file. Once again, regardless of what you make, it's a matter of record. It's a matter of historical fact, and it's a matter of not leaving any of those gaps. So you should file something. There are so many reasons why, particularly this year. Now, you have to be very careful with this past year, which was 2020, that you're filing for, because once again, a lot of people lost jobs. A lot of people did not or have not made the amount that they were normally used to. Maybe you're used to getting 75 or greater, or in the high 60s, some of you in the 40s. Regardless, I can't, other than the, what do they call them, frontline employees, or all of those employees that stayed working, like MTA and nurses and so on and so forth. Other than those people, we all had some sort of gap with regard to our business opening and closing, because at one point everything shut down. Some people were not working from home. The day laborers, the people who were in housekeeping, hotels, the hospitality industry, the movie industry, the Broadway industry, musicians, gig workers, everybody had a pause. So that has caused some sort of debt. So now that debt may have pulled you below the filing rate. Now I'm going to give you, please get a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm going to give you some sites to go to see if there are changes. Your income bracket may have changed even before COVID, because there are so many more new laws. There's so many tax changes. You may be in a different income bracket and not even realize it. So I'll give you the tools so you can figure it out, and I'll give you some guidance as to how to get from point A to point B. Okay, so now, reasons that you should file regardless. No matter if you fall, once again, you may have fallen under the cap, but check because your range may have changed, your income bracket may have changed. But let's work under the assumption for people who feel, you know what, I'm not even gonna file this year because, big mistake. Here's why. If your employer withheld federal income tax from your paycheck in the last year, or if taxes were withheld from other sources because you may be getting child support from an agreement, you may be getting a distribution from an accident or something, you may have had income tax withheld, or you may have had a withholding that could affect your income tax. If this is true, you're entitled to a refund. And guess what? Unless you file a 1040, you can't get the refund. So it's not all about sometimes what you have physically made for you. It's about what's going on around you that you have unconsciously generated. So if you put something to record, they will figure it out when you put something to record. And in this case, that record is a 1040 filing. So you may have withheld taxes that you could be paid back for. That's number one reason for filing. Number two, you may have paid in 2019, especially if you were a business owner. I'm talking to people who are sole proprietors, people who are small business owners, and people who are 1099s. That's independent contractors. Sometimes, especially if you're dealing with an accountant, they'll project for your next year. Now, here's how this affects you. And a lot of people, once again, don't know this. Sometimes when you deal with an accountant, he will project the event that you'll pay things in advance. And then if you're filing and you're filing above your threshold because you expect your business to grow, you are due a return. So there's money there. But once again, unless you file a 1040, you're not going to see it. That's your number two reason for filing. Number three, and this is a term that you're hearing being thrown around a lot more lately because of the new changes in the America Plan package that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris just worked out. But this was always there, not to the level at which they have created, but this was always there. You may have had an earned income tax credit. So you may qualify because of now. If you didn't qualify before, you may qualify now. Especially with people working with COVID and you're falling below a certain rate now. But once again, if you don't file, you won't find out. So do not assume just because there's no money there. All right. Number four, specifically, the child tax credit. Now, parents with children under 16, this now, and I'm going to let JAXS deal with that. I have a short video for you to watch that really goes into how they're breaking it down and how it's going to be dispersed. But if you're not sure that you qualify for these things, because there are caps on it and you have to be below a certain amount. I think as a single, you have to be below 75,000. And as a couple, I think it's 120 to 150,000 if you're filing jointly. But get the pen. Here's when you're going to need it. If you go to irs.gov, G-O-V, and you go to on line tool. You'll be able to check to see. There's a couple of things that you can check here, but on this issue, you'll be able to check to see if you fall within the range to receive it. There's a lot of money. The government wants everybody to get back on track. Whether it's for them or for you is irrelevant. There is a lot of money to be had. And you guys, we can't sit still and bellyache about this. I don't see the point. If there is money to be had and you're an American citizen that's filing taxes, go and get it because you're due for it. Okay, the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Now, this is the one with the new changes. This credit covers expenses for students. Actually, no, this is not the one. This is the one for college students. Listen good. Parents with kids in college, listen very well for this, especially first years. This credit covers expenses for your student who is in the first year of college. It's worth over $2,500, can be claimed by a parent, a spouse, or the student themselves, because at 19 they can file by themselves. But if the student is being paid, whoever is filing for this cannot be a dependent on somebody else. So if your student is going to claim it, they can't be living at home. They have to be off on their own. But that's $2,000, $2,500. That can go into books, that can go into housing. Once again, if you don't file, you won't know. And this is not necessarily pendulent on what you have, but a lot of these tax credits are pendulent right now on what you have not. So don't let the fact that your level of income has dropped so severely that, oh, I don't have to file. I cannot say that enough times during the course of this show. Income drop does not matter. File because you can get certain credits. All right. Number 6, the premium tax credit. This helps folks. Okay, this is usually for the older folks, but nonetheless, you're going to need this later on because at some point, hopefully, you're going to get to 55, 65, and you're going to need these services. So it makes sense to pay into them to make sure that you have a base behind you. This helps folks pay for insurance that you brought through healthcare marketplace, basically Obamacare. The credit can be claimed by incomes ranging from 100% to 400% of the Fed's poverty level. Okay, in plain English, this particular tax credit is based on the fact that you can't make ends meet. Once again, if you do not file and let them know that you're having a deficit, that your life has changed so drastically that you need to take this credit, or they can see, and don't assume that they're going to give it to you. You have to really take the time and ask the questions, because I'm giving them to you now. If you're using an accountant, you say, well, what about the premium tax credit? Because, I paid into the marketplace and I need to be able to have some help or get some back. You have to be able to ask for them. There's a lot of hidden stuff. If you're not using an accountant, if you're not using a tax preparer and you're doing it for yourself online, there's a little guy in the corner that kind of helps you, that digital person. You can type this in and ask, and they'll tell you whether, what line to fill it in or how to get it. All right. So once again, another thing, based on a sliding scale of the poverty level. Number 7, the health coverage tax credit. Okay, this is another health-related tax. Listen to this one. Helps displaced workers and pre-retirees pay for their own health insurance. This falls between the ages of 55, 65. Some things may have happened. You may have taken a package. A lot of the middle-aged people are not being invited back because once again, and then we spoke about this in a previous show, you were such a hot commodity because of your level of experience and the fact that you've been there for years and your salary had grown and your worth had grown because you were a pillar of your corporation. Some of these corporations don't have the money to bring you back. Why would they bring you back making $120,000, $150,000 a year when they can hire two newbies at 35, 40 grand and teach them and get double the work? Mind you, in terms of the nuances, they're not going to get. They'll get a different thing. But maybe if they're leaning towards the computer age, they are considering that young people are more in tune with that as opposed to the older people. But let's get back to this. So the health coverage tax credit is more specifically between 55 and 65 years old, whose pension plans maybe were taken over by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. This is where 75% of your health coverage. And once again, when you take a package, your pension package is no longer maintenance. In fact, most pension packages are not maintenance by the corporation itself. They're farmed out to another company that invests and manages the pension package. So it's worth the check. You get money back, and this will help you pay those expenses that you're paying out of pocket for. And that was actually number 7. We got all of those. So that's 7 huge reasons as to why you should be filing an income tax return, regardless. Once again, it's a matter of record. That's the biggie. It's good for the IRS not to see any gaps in your filing history. And to add to that, gaps cause red flags because let's say you don't file this year and you don't file next year. This year you're not working, you're unemployed. And for those, speaking of unemployment, for those of you who are unemployed and getting unemployment insurance, you really need to file because you have certain unemployment is taxation, does fall under taxation. There's a new tax law where if you've made X amount through unemployment, it's non-taxable. But once again, there are so many things. It's worth taking the time to sit down and find out because there are so many changes. There's so many new stuff. There's so many ways for you to actually get a refund. Going back to the taxation history, the biggest thing for me is it affects your pension, it affects your Social Security. And as I was saying before, when you leave gaps, this year you made nothing, next year you're having a year and you're still not filing because you fall below. But then the next year you get this really fabulous job. You're working from home because it's a tech job. And now you're writing off this and you're writing off that and you're raising up a whole mess of red flags. And speaking of writing off, for those of you who are working at home and claiming the home office and you're writing off this and writing off that, be careful because the IRS is not letting a lot of things eke by because people are trying to claim everything but the mortgage because they're working at home and now it's a whole corporation in my house. You can't do that. And the last thing you want with the IRS is a red flag. Trust me, you do not want to be on their bad side. Just as a side to that, the IRS is not going to pick up the phone and call you. You have to understand that when the IRS contacts you, they're going to contact you by mail. They're going to send all of their documentation in writing. They're going to ask you to send certain things back because the United States government is an email trail. The Postal Service for them is the trail by which they will follow to document you. And you can go online, set up an account, you can go online and you can check all of this stuff. Okay. If you get a username, you get a password, and you can go online and see your history and see everything and print it for papers that you may have lost. Maybe you had a fire or something. It's all there. I'm telling you that irs.gov and that online tool should be your best friend through this process, because it's really a wonderful tool to help you decipher everything that is going on. And it's worth it. It's worth it for you to take care of your personal interests when it comes down to this. Okay? So basically, when you don't file, you're hurting your future. When you don't file, you're also hurting your present, because there are so many credits that you may now qualify for. So you need the help, get the help. To the independent contractors and to the sole proprietors and even to the gig workers, I'm not sure if you all know. I think that they're running, I'm not sure when the program ends right now, because I really hadn't intended to talk about this. It kind of just jumped into my head. You guys can get PPP as well. Now, PPP is the Paycheck Protection Plan that in the beginning of the pandemic, the government had released this huge amount of funds so that restaurants and all these businesses could get the money to pay their payroll to keep their workers working. What you didn't realize that in the second round, when in the first round you heard all the nightmare stories about all of these big corporations were getting millions and the poor little guys with the restaurant on the corner wasn't, getting anything. On second round, it became available that sole proprietors and 1099s. Now, at one point, I was listed as a 1099 because I was out in the field. If you're a photographer, if you're a gig worker, if you're somebody who works where you're like on call for a specific type of event, and you're just going out for that, you can get a PPP. If you go online, there are a lot of advertisements online for this, but check with the Better Business Bureau. They have listings on their site as to companies that do the PPP. A lot of them are just basically neighborhood savings banks, family savings banks, that they're listed and they will do the work with you. And it takes maybe 7 days. And for some, it's maybe $6,000. You, as an independent contractor, you normally would have a Schedule C when you file. So if you can put your hands on your Schedule C, and for some of these banks, if you don't have that paperwork at hand, they'll help you look it up. Because once again, if you keep your record consistent with the IRS and you go and get your username and password, just fill it out. You use your social security number at irs.gov, which is IRS.gov, and it will show you how to set up an account. All of your information is right there. So other companies, when you give them permission, can go in and get that. And if you have the ability to get the extra funds, that's an income. That's a sole proprietor business. You get paid for that. Or if you, as I said, a photographer, that's your livelihood. You weren't getting any jobs because maybe you're a wedding photographer. Nobody was having weddings because all venues were closed. That's a PPP. You qualify for that. So go check it out. And the last thing on the IRS with regard to that site, if you have been getting the paper check, like you fill it out and you send in your paperwork, you mail it, you sign it, you run to the post office by 12 midnight on the night, you pay to have your filing sent off. You really need to consider doing it digitally now. And here's why. This is a biggie. When you get these stimulus checks, were you one of the people who waited for them to come to you by mail? Or were you one of the people who had direct deposit and it went directly to your bank account? You really want to think about moving into the digital age because number one, it's quicker. The biggest factor in an era of COVID-19 is it's safer. And it's just so much more simple and so less things to deal with in terms of how you do your banking. And the government, some people are conspiracy theorists, and I don't want the government to have this. And you know how silly you sound when you say those things. Because we're talking about the United States government. All of you people who are talking about they're tracking my information and do you know you carry a cell phone? That's a tracker. You know you use Gmail? Okay, so let's dispense with the conspiracy theory, shall we? If the government wanted to track you, you're walking around with the tracker in your hand that you can't put down. Some of you sleep with the damn thing in the bed. Get real, folks. If there's anything that was said that can help you, we're so happy. But family, please take advantage of these things. They are for you. You are here. You've earned it. Just because you live through this thing, you've earned it. So take advantage. And invest the money when you get it. Putting money in the bank, in regular savings accounts, that's really something of the past. What you need to be looking at is high yield. If you're using a savings account, you really need to be looking at a high yield savings account. You need to be looking at investment accounts. Stop being afraid to put your money to work for you. Get an insurance policy. We did a show on this already. Call Marguerite Daniels. I'll give you her number at the end of the show when we did the insurance show. But set up something for yourself that will grow. Like I said, when you put money in the bank, when you put money in a savings account, you might as well be putting it under the bed mattress like the old folks used to do. Let your money work for you. You don't have to invest $1,000. You don't have to invest these big amounts. You can invest. There are penny spots. Sorry, there are penny stocks. There are pork belly stocks. There are low cost stocks that you can. I mean, you really can invest $5. The whole thing is the longevity of the investment. Attach it to an insurance policy. That way you're covered. Your kids are covered. The house is covered. You might want to bundle it and do your car insurance, the house insurance. If you're in an apartment, you can have an insurance that covers your things in the apartment in case something happens or there's a fire in the building. But you have an investment. It's time for us to start thinking bigger and thinking out of the box and planning. You plan a vacation. You work all year. You take 2 weeks off and you spend more time planning a vacation for 2 weeks, every detail, than you do planning the next 5 years of your life. It's nonsense, people. We gotta do better. We gotta do better. And then we sit here and we bellyache about we don't have money, we're living from paycheck to paycheck, I don't know what to do. You don't know what to do because you're not listening. It's time. It's time. If anything, this COVID virus and this pandemic and the lockdown should have taught you, it's time. We're pivoting. We must all pivot within ourselves. Anyway, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we will have Jax come on and she'll do the breakdown on that new America's Rescue Plan. Stay tuned.
I hit recorded drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets. When I'm performing, never boring, now you can't afford it. Champagne Perrier, finish friends on my face, looking like I'm from the deep.
Y'all really want to see anything? I'm saying, do y'all really want to see anything? I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. This is going to be a party. I want everybody to go. Go Dana, get busy. Go Dana, get busy. Let me hear it.
Dana's coming to town.
When we get hurt, no one tells us.
Lose the crutches. It's all in your head.
If someone is seriously ill, we don't say,
just feel less pneumonia-y.
So how is it that when
I'm not able to sleep at night?
I'm anxious all the time.
Drinking is the only way I can feel good these days.
Seems like I'm arguing with the people I love nonstop.
or other issues related to our mental health, too many people pretend we can just
snap out of it.
Taking care of our mental health shouldn't be any different than taking care of our physical health. But let's be honest, there's still too much secrecy and shame around seeking help. The truth is, this affects nearly all of us. 1 in 5 adult New Yorkers are dealing with a mental health disorder every year. Now imagine a city where the path to taking care of your mental health is crystal clear. We're not just going to imagine it. We created a roadmap for mental health to make our city as healthy and as strong as it can be. The roadmap has 6 guiding principles. Change the culture. Let's make it easier to talk about our mental health. Act early. Investing in prevention gives New Yorkers the tools to weather challenges. Close treatment gaps. We need proven programs in every neighborhood and every community. Partner with communities. The wisdom of local communities will help us get to the most effective solutions. Use data better. Better data means better treatment, better policies, and better prevention. Strengthen government's ability to lead, because we have a responsibility to support your access to mental health. New York City is moving closer to the day when the path to mental health is clear for every New Yorker. Get involved. Find out more about the roadmap here.
Hey, how you doing? I know we touched on this on the last episode just slightly, but I have gotten more information for you guys. Thank you, ESP, as well. So I'm just gonna go over how the whole thing is gonna work, give you some tips, and provide a website and a calculator that you guys can use to figure this out, okay? In the year 2020, the child tax credit was $2,000 per child, and that was for children 16 and under. So in 2021, the American Rescue Plan, which is a temporary tax credit just for the year 2021, the tax credit has now increased to $3,000 for children 17 and under. So that 16-year-old age has been upped by 1 year. So it's $3,000 for children 17 and under and $3,600 for children 6 and under. So you will be able to claim more than one child, but the payments can differ from one child to the next. And that includes if one child is maybe 14 and maybe one child is 5 years old, you would get $3,600 for the 5-year-old, $3,000 for the 14-year-old. Now, the tax credit is fully refundable, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. They have also removed the floor for earnings, which means in the past, you had to make at least $2,500 in order to claim any taxes or to file, you still file, but in order to claim. They have now removed that $2,500. So let's say, for instance, in 2020, you lost your job, you had no income, you can still file for the tax credit as long as you have children. Now, one important thing, if you are claiming a child, any children, number one, they must be a U.S. citizen. Number two, they must be a relative. Number three, you have to claim them on your forms. Number four, they have to have lived with you at least 6 months of that calendar year. And you have to claim them as a dependent. And the most important thing, that child needs a social security number, which you have to include the name of the child and the social security number on your tax returns. If you don't, you cannot claim that tax credit. So if you have children right now and they don't have a social security number, you know what to do. And of course, the child must be related to you in some way, shape, or form. Now, not all families are going to qualify for this. And what they're doing is they are what they're calling a phase out of the tax credit based on your AGI, which is your adjusted gross income. So at this time, a person filing single who makes $75,000 or more, head of household filing who makes $112,000 or more, or a couple filing jointly and they make $150,000 or more, that credit is going to be reduced by $50 per thousand. Okay, so an example of that, let's say you have a couple that has a 17-year-old child, right? And you jointly file and you make $160,000 a year. You're $10,000 above the $150,000 threshold for couples filing jointly. They will reduce your tax credit by $50 per thousand. So that's $10,000, $50 off each of that $10,000, which will mean your tax will be, your credit will be reduced by $500. So that's another thing that you need to look out for. So how are they going to make these payments or give you this credit? Well, in the American Rescue Plan, they have made it to where the IRS has to make half of the payments in advance. They're calling these periodic payments. These payments should take place between July and December. Now, with that being said, the IRS has a bit of wiggle room as to how many payments they are going to send between that time and the amount of the payments. So it won't necessarily be broken down into 6 payments. They could come back and say, we're going to make these periodic payments twice between July and December for half of the tax credit in periodic payments direct to you. And then the other will be claimed on your taxes as a credit. So that means, for example, let's say a family with a child, 14 years old, claiming that $3,000 tax credit, they could see payments for 6 months of $250 each. And then when you file for 2021, the other half of that tax credit will be claimed on your taxes, which in turn makes it fully refundable. And that's a good thing. So again, if you don't meet the threshold, you can still file the 2020 rate, which is $2,000 per child, and they will still have to make that payment to you, half payment. So if you're claiming $2,000 on a child that's 14, you'll probably see about $167 a month. Again, this is based on the IRS sending out a payment every 6 months. We don't know what they're going to do yet. Remember, the IRS is a government institution, and the American Rescue Plan has afforded, I believe it's $400 million to the IRS so that they can implement these changes. Because along with all of this, the IRS has plans to set up a portal, a taxpayer portal. And this will be important because how they're going to calculate these payments is based on your prior tax returns. Now, we do know that most people have not filed for 2020 yet. Tax date is April 15th, but we have been extended now to May 15th. And then from May to July, that's the only time that the IRS has to get this in order. So that $400 million is supposed to help them implement all of these things, including the taxpayer portal. Now, what this portal is going to be used for is, let's say you've had a baby since your last filing, or you got divorced, or you got married. You can go into the portal, update all of your information so that the IRS can recalculate how much you will be owed and what bracket you belong in. So let's hope that the IRS can get that part of it right. That would be great. And I think that I've covered everything as far as how the payments are calculated, dispersed, how you claim them on your taxes. Another thing I do want to make you aware of, two things actually. You can opt out of advance payments. Let's say for some reason you don't want the monthly payments that they're going to send. That's fine. You can opt out of those advance payments and claim the full credit on your tax returns for that year. So that's another option you have. And also, this is a good thing to know. Back taxes and child support payments that are in arrears cannot be offset by these payments. So for example, let's say you owe $4,000 in child support and you are due to get let's say the $3,000 child tax credit. Those payments will not be used to bring your child support payments up to date. But please get your child support payments up to date, okay? And also another caveat is, if you are getting these payments and you have debt collectors or creditors coming after you, these payments are vulnerable to that, as well as garnishments. So just be aware. Other than that, I think that this is going to hopefully help a lot of families out there with children. The direct payments, that's, extra money every month that can be just allotted to food or clothing or whatever. And then at the end of the year, you still have room to move. So I want to give you some information really quickly. You can go to Google, type in child tax credit calculator. They're going to ask you somewhere between 5 and 10 questions about your current status. You enter that information in and you can get a general idea of what you qualify for, what you don't qualify for, and how much in payments you may get. So that's a good tool to have. We will provide a link below where you can go and get all kinds of tax information, including the child tax credit. It's like Susie sells seashells by the seashore, okay? But I hope this information is helpful to you.
Historic. Families can expect thousands of dollars in relief. First, those stimulus checks, up to $1,400 for about 90% of households. The full amount for individuals making up to $75,000 a year and phasing out at $80,000. A check for each kid, and this time their adult dependents qualify. Think an elderly parent and college-age student. If history is a guide, once signed into law, it could take a matter of days to start to hit bank accounts. People with bank information on file with the IRS, they're likely to get their money first based on their most recent tax return. That's 2019 if you haven't filed for 2020 yet. But the bigger payout here is the expanded child tax credit, a critical and historic effort to eradicate income inequality and child poverty. It gives parents with children 6 and under $3,600 per child for a year and $3,000 per child aged 7 through 17, $500 for each child 17 and 18 or full-time college students 19 to 24. Key here, direct monthly payments instead of getting a lump sum at tax time. Some back-of-the-envelope math, a family with 2 parents, 2 kids making, say, $96,000 a year, added up, that's $1,400 stimulus checks 4 times, $3,000 for each child under 18, that's $11,600 for that family. Another example, a single mother with 1 child, a stimulus check and the child tax credit together equal $5,800. And there's a more generous earned income tax credit. So much of this legislation is geared toward low-income Americans. The Tax Policy Center says a low-income household with children would get an average tax cut of nearly $7,700, raising their after-tax income by more than 35%. This law is sprawling. There are tax breaks for childcare and dependent seniors or an incapacitated spouse, subsidies for healthcare premiums, money for agriculture, including $5 billion for disadvantaged farmers, a quarter of whom are black. There's housing aid, incentives for paid sick leave, plussed up food stamp benefits through September, money for vaccine distribution and for schools, and an extra $300 a week in jobless benefits through the fall. And the first $10,200 is tax-free for eligible households.
Well, family, once again, we tie up the end of a show. I'm so glad that this was a short one. And for those of you who celebrate Easter, tomorrow's Resurrection Morning. Happy Resurrection Morning. Spring. Happy everything. Happy thank you for showing up. Happy ESP&JAXS. But just be happy. Do for yourself. Do something nice for yourself this season. It's been a long road, and you deserve something special. Have a great one. We will see you soon on ESP&JAXS. And remember, be positive.
Test negative. See you guys next time.